Hello, my friends. The last time we chatted here, we talked about a big event that was on the impending horizon. Looks like the 15th of July is going to be a particularly memorable day. And this information comes from now, I think I've got, I don't know, 10 or 12 different independent sources that all suggest that there is something really extraordinary or memorable, at least, that is likely to happen on that Monday. And talked in some kind of detail about the potentials, the likely, the suggested kind of scenario about what this is about on a previous postscript. And we have dealt with this subject on transition talks and in quartet and what's up. And so it's on the minds and in the consciousness of a lot of folks. Most of the discussion has been about kind of disastrous, catastrophic, disruptive kind of aspects, what this might be. We're living in a period, obviously, where there are a lot of moving parts, if you will. Lots of wars, lots of people just jockeying around, trying to get positioned to dominate the planet in one way or another. We're on the edge of kind of the collapse of some countries, even because of the overextension on their debt. There are people like Martin Armstrong who are saying that, there's a place, and Dave Martin for that matter, who are saying that somewhere around 2027, the whole thing comes down because it's impossible to keep it going. And therefore, there are all these efforts at resetting the financial system and such so that they can wipe out all of the debt that the governments have that they never would be able to pay. In any case, the system is on the teetering on the edge of kind of failure, implosion, if you will. And that is classic kind of description of a transition from one era to another one. What you get is a multi-sectored failure of the old system, and which makes way for the emergence of a new one. Generates a vacuum that allows for the new world to emerge. And in this particular case, in North America, they're talking about, 5 different countries by 2030 or 2032. Big change. And it's a problem for most humans because what we want is predictability, and we do not like disruption. And that we work very hard to try to get some continuity, and so that we can kind of plan for the next day or the next week or the next year, or as it may be. That is kind of essentially antithetical to what's going on right here, because we're in the middle of this amazing kind of transition and change. And so the question then becomes, how do you position yourself? How do you think about what's going on here in ways that allow you to effectively surf this wave into this amazing kind of future that's coming down the street? That is an important kind of distinction from the natural kind of reaction to all of this uncertainty and chaos and the kind of erosion of the present system, which generates generally fear, and it's augmented by the media and all of the powers that be who are trying to generate a narrative that really amplifies that basic kind of notion. The ultimate objective being, of course, to generate dependency upon governments and these large institutions, financial institutions, and so on. So on one hand, you've got this very organized, highly financed, very sophisticated kind of effort to try to tell you how horrible it's going to be and generate a lot of fear and dependency. And on the other hand, what we're trying to do is try to break loose from all that, uh, cut our tethers to all of those social and financial and religious and other kind of things, and free ourselves up to become the new human, the next variation of the species, and activate extraordinary kind of capabilities that we have intrinsically within us. But we just they've been suppressed up until now. I mean, this is a really, really, really big deal. And so it's one thing to be aware of what's coming downstream a little bit, like what might happen on Monday, the 15th of July. But it's quite another thing to succumb to the emotional kind of dependency that's just commonly associated with knowing about those kinds of things. There are many people who would suggest, and well-meaning people who would say, this is all negative and you're generating fear. And I would argue rather strongly that no, when you get surprised with the kind of surprises that are coming down this stream, in this future, then that is, if you're not prepared and not aware, then that is what's going to generate large amounts of fear. And so it's no different than getting a pilot's license or any number of things like that, that scary if you're not trained and you haven't thought about it and you haven't practiced or whatever. But once you become familiar with the possibilities and the other things, and you train on different aspects of the kind of execution of this thing, flying an airplane in this case, then it becomes kind of, you can deal with it. You've thought about the things before, the possibility that the radios would go out or whatever. And that's essentially what we need to do here. We need to be intellectually aware of the possibilities and what's going on, but we don't want to be emotionally, have your heart attached to emotions to this thing, because that's the thing that'll drive you. You need to have a context, a picture of what all is going on. And that's what I'd like to talk to you about just a briefly about here right now, is that it's important to know what we've already talked about, is that might be some kind of a major event of shut down the internet for a while, or the power grid, or they may project 3D things with aliens or space aliens or whatever. I don't know. It's something kind of pretty big and disruptive. But I'm here to tell you that we're going to live through this, and I'll tell you why. And this is a good kind of perspective to have, or at least I think. I don't think that we as human beings, as a species, have come this far to fail. History, unconventional to be sure, but history tells us that multiple times, maybe as many as 5 times in the past, humanity has gotten to a place in their evolution where they kind of peaked out, if you will, and rapidly collapsed, whether it was related to a major cosmic event that happened, or in the case of Atlantis, apparently their technology got ahead of the ability to kind of effectively deal with it. In any case, there have been multiple times, apparently, in the past, when humanity has gotten to the point where they couldn't make it any further and the whole system collapsed and started over again. So this is the latest in a series of efforts by the species to get to the place where you break free from the kind of 3-dimensional constraints and the environment that we're all very familiar with, and become, at the very least, all members of a larger community in this area of the universe and the galaxy, and we find out that there are other folks around here that we need to deal with and that we can deal with, and it'll help support what we're trying to do. More than that, it also has to do with the fact that there's all these waves of energy coming out of the center of the galaxy and other places in the galaxy that are affecting both the sun and directly affecting humans and activating DNA and allowing the emergence of capabilities that we have been resident but suppressed for a long period of time. And so things like manifestation and telekinesis and any of a number of these kind of capabilities that there's plenty of people around the world that have one or two of these kinds of things. But what's happening is it's coming together, and we're going to have a goodly number of people that are going to suddenly see themselves and understand that they have capabilities and the ability to deal with this new reality in quite a different way. And in so doing, they see themselves and they see reality and an expanded awareness I talk about, such that it becomes the basis for building a new world, right? You become a new human, you see the world, you see yourself, you see the reality in a different way. And that then translates into the kind of institutions and the use of technologies and other kind of things that generate a new world. That's kind of the positive scenario, or the normative scenario we call in the futures business, with the desired kind of future you'd like. But the question, but kind of the point here that I'd like to make is that there is a logic to all of this. There's this makes sense. This is not just a science fiction or grabbing some random kind of set of conditions that we're going to try to consider because it might be possible. No, it's bigger and more profound than that. There are, as I've said, we've tried this before, apparently, and hasn't quite worked. But this time it seems like it's going to work. And I'll tell you why I believe that. There are a number of kind of contributing factors to this environment that we find ourselves in. One of them, that if you get outside of the box a bit and try to think about this, is that we are not here alone. All of throughout the history of the human development, there have been non-human kind of sources that played an important kind of role in this, both on the seemingly negative and the positive side. But let's talk about the positive ones, because there are, it's hard to tell, of course, obviously, because these are not things that we know or we have seen. That's hard to even know what you know, if for real. But in any case, there are multiple sources that say that there were otherworldly groups whose job it was is to help plant life on different planets, and they came and did that here. And whether it was the Anunnaki or the Pleiadians or the whoever it turned out to be, that there was some active effort to do essentially genetic design, genetic modification early on, that resulted in the human beings that we've now become. As it turns out, I would argue from the things that I've read that those groups, call them what? The Pleiadians. One of the books by Barbara Marciniak that I'm reading right now is about Pleiadians. Suggests that the Pleiadians they are there and they're engaged in an appropriate way, and they are trying to husband us through this kind of process. And so number one, you're not alone. This has happened before, other places on other planets, and it's happening now, and it's very disruptive because it's strange. It's, like a baby being born, getting pushed into a whole new environment with lights and colors and sounds and things you've never seen before. And it's very much like that, along with all the attendant kind of chaos and uncertainty and the need to kind of become adapted to all of that. But unlike a baby being born, one presumes, uh, we can build a picture, a larger picture about what in fact is happening and what's going on here. And so one is that this is a natural kind of process, that it is we're being helped and encouraged from outside of our three-dimensional kind of world and our reality, that the kind of events that we're being presented with are all designed essentially for us to rise to the occasion. They're being presented with problems. We call them problems, at least. They're opportunities to see ourselves, see the world in a new way. And so you need to look at all this kind of stuff and say, how do I see this differently? How do I get a bigger perspective about all of these kinds of things? So it's a distinct kind of evolutionary kind of opportunity for each of us as individuals, as well as a species, and a species and as group. There are many different perspectives that comes from even biblical things, but lots of ancient writings and all suggest that we live in a, I don't know, it's different. It's characterized differently. Sometimes as plays or a game or some kind of an artificial construct. I mean, right now you've got lots of people, Elon Musk, a bunch of guys like that, Greg Braden even, who are making rather persuasive cases that we might live in a simulation, in some kind of a video game almost in. And I've had people very compellingly kind of convince me that that was the case, and it may well be. Well, in any case, whether it is an artificial kind of construct that we've been parachuted in as consciousness to kind of operate in this space, to see how we kind of develop ourselves and how we become kind of higher levels of consciousness, or whether it is structured in some other kind of way, there are kind of regular, common, lots of many kind of sources that all say this reality is not what you think it is. That this reality is not what it looks like. This reality is a product of your mind and of your mental. Hermes Trismegistus, the Hermetic principles start by saying all is mental. This physical reality that we look at is a byproduct, is a direct kind of product of our minds, and so we can change our minds. So it's almost as though, now get this, it's almost as though we have this kind of ability to change the environment, the context in which we live, and we've been thrown into this space for the explicit purpose of trying to learn how to develop that capability, to be able to get to the place where we can affect, in Bruce Lipton terms, all of our health care and all of our biology by the way that we think, and how our thoughts and our emotions influence all of that. If you read any of a number of folks who operate in the space of manifestation, it's the underlying kind of notion is that you can generate and produce anything you can think about if you learn the underlying kind of the techniques and the processes for doing that. A lot of it has to do, I've come to the conclusion, with belief, whether you really believe or not. And the issue there is that all of our experience in this space is designed almost to make us think that we are weak and we're incapable of doing all kinds of things, that we can't just take off and fly away because of gravity. And so we've got all these logical things that say why we can't do what we otherwise might want to do. And at its kind of core, there's this principle that says you can do anything that you want to do. And so that is kind of the operating space for in this simulation, if you want, or the game or the play or whatever it is that the issue is how do you play this? How do you play your role in the most effective way? Well, you don't do that by being afraid, that's for sure. And so the whole issue is how to understand that this is not what it looks like. I mean, it's obviously all designed to make you really think and feel like it really is what it seems. And we're the point is, how do we break loose from that that mindset? It's a paradigm, it's a mindset that says what we see with our eyes and hear with our ears and so on is kind of all there is, and that's the way it works. That's what science is trying to tell us, kind of writ large. There's a great deal of hubris. They think they kind of know how it works, and I wouldn't be surprised if we know 2% of how it really works. It's a really big and very complex, and so we need to consider that. There's another point, and that is these other forces, these other dimensional forces who are allied with us, who have a vested interest in the success of the evolution of this species. They're not interested in losing. I mean, they're doing their best to make this kind of work. And what they seem to communicate from multiple kind of sources is that we have passed the critical point where there is a critical mass of people who are humans who see themselves and see this world in this big, expanded, new kind of way, who are breaking free from all of those tethers and all those anchors to this social and religious and governmental and all educational kind of constraints that we've all been kind of built up over our lifetimes. And so that this thing is, and so what many kind of sources have suggested is that somewhere back around 2012 or something like that, you kind of passed the point where you got a critical mass together of folks who saw themselves and saw the world in a new way. And that is going to necessarily carry us into this new space. And so we, which is not to say that there aren't going to be problems and issues and something, and people are going to die and so on, but this is headed in the right direction. Now, there's another thing that I always keep in mind, and that is that if these scenarios of the kind that I've talked about, particularly things like a tsunami that wipes out the east coast of the United States, or an EMP attack that takes down the grid and the internet, and and everything stops for years, maybe, or most of a year. Those are from a philosophical almost point of view, those are antithetical to the whole kind of direction of the emergence and the elevation and of humanity, of this extraordinary kind of big trend of what's going on here, that we are trying to rise up to this next level of accomplishment and perspective, and we've made it over the hump. And if there was some big event like that, or a giant nuclear war to drive everybody back down into fear, which is just the opposite of where this is all supposed to go and needs to go. And so, in a sense, our job, those of us who are thinking about this, trying to be on the front end of all of this, is to not succumb to that fear and to get outside of this and see this whole process in a bigger picture. And in terms of the evolution of humanity, and that these kinds of events, we can make our way through this. And by the way, we've already got confirmation that it's going to work out. And so all of the other things are kind of subordinate to that, as long as we keep our focus and keep going the way we're going. So there is a whole kind of a group of things there. I also believe, by the way, that the reality is essentially benign. It's loving. And that love is the essence of the 0-point energy field, the animating field from which everything arises, is we call love. And as it kind of coalesces and congeals around different kind of configurations, energetic configurations, waveforms, you call them, then that's what we get is beauty, and flowers and people and all kinds of things are just these components or these configurations of the underlying kind of field of love. Well, that's very encouraging to me, that this is all going to work. You know, it's happened before. The underlying process is benign and loving. We've passed kind of the point or the high point in this thing, and we got the critical mass. It's going in the right direction. We've got outside help that is kind of supporting all of this. And, you know, by the way, they may start showing up in another year or two or sometime soon, and then be an integral part of this transition. In any case, and this is a really big, important kind of thing. And so it's unless we allow our leaders to kind of screw this thing up, I think it's all going to work out quite well. And it, you know, it's going to be interesting, at least. And I mean that in the biggest kind of intriguing kind of way, because trying to sit there and handicap and kind of see these things from kind of an arm's length, you know, kind of removed as from an observer point of view, that says that I don't, in a sense, you know, I don't have a dog in this fight. This is an interesting thing. It seems that, you know, they want you to think like you're in the middle of it, but it's you really can be further out, and you can see this in a larger kind of comprehensive way. And if you can do that, that's the essence of kind of getting into this part of, you know, a big part of getting into this next level of kind of evolution and development. So I wanted to pass that along here quickly before we get to the next Monday. So no matter what they try, and by the way, it, you know, it could be really exotic projections, holographic, big, supernatural kind of projections, and try to convince everybody that, I don't know, it's the second coming or whatever thing that they are, or big aliens are coming or whatever it is. It could be any of a number of kind of things, but whatever it looks like, it's going to be interesting. And then we'll get a chance to kind of work on kind of bring it all together afterwards. So thanks. And we'll be back again next week. Talk to you. Take care. Bye.